Ready?
Okay. Welcome to an episode of Horse Medicine Leadership TV. I am joined here by Russell Grimaldi, who is a coach and he is a faculty member of Horse Medicine Leadership. And I wanted to invite him to come on and talk about his journey with horses and his learning with horses to be able to share, um, the insights that we get from participating in this work and also being a leader of it. So, Russell, I will hand it over to you. We can talk about what drew you in and some impact and teaching that you've gotten from the horses, and we'll let it flow from there.
Sounds like a plan. And if you see me having a little tea, I happen to have a hoarse voice this morning while we're actually talking about horses, so it's coincidental. There are a couple questions within your first question, and so I'll try to answer it in parts. Um, well, as a compliment to you, I was really led to the work through you. As you probably remember, I guess it was about 7 years ago, we were working with a friend, developing some curriculum for her leadership academy and practice, Kristen Gregory, with the Wild Leadership Academy. And as we were doing this work out in Wyoming, you were part of that team. And to see you work with horses, which we knew was your background from equine reproduction through really kind of just building horse medicine very organically on your end. I was taken by just how powerful the learnings were, how aware and engaged everyone was. And coincidentally enough, horses have always been my favorite animal, but I actually was deathly afraid of them. I would never get too close. And it came to really be a learning that I wasn't necessarily afraid of them. I was afraid of the power that resided in me. And so I was drawn to the work really through getting in touch with that fear and uncertainty that they were bringing up and how powerful the messages were.
I love that. Um, I fear of horses is a common one. That a lot of people will say I'm terrified of horses, and I always like to say there's levels to that in terms of why. I think one of them is being, I think we see in the horse it becomes almost this symbolism of ourselves and, like you said, in our power. And I think the fear of our own power is something that's very common, for humans. That's one of the things that we're terrified of, is to have this 1,000-pound animal that's reflective of this really kind of raw primal power. I think can trigger that fear. And how we, how do we be with that? So I'm curious for you, because obviously that's where you started from. How did that shift for you, or terms of what's the different relationship you might have with that after going through the program or being around horses, and how you're grounded in that differently from where that initial inquiry became
It's,
started.
it's such it's such a great question, Hillary, and thanks for asking. Because you know when we're in relationship, when we look at relationships and being in relation with others, a lot of people have fear and uncertainty, just even in meeting or working with people that they don't know, people who have different styles. And I think this is part of what drew me to it, but also helped me. Obviously, I couldn't be a coach certified in equine assisted learning if I had fear of horses. But the more we understand and begin to be able to interpret the behavior and messages, understanding and respecting boundaries, and setting boundaries and being able to work within them, the more we begin to be able to communicate and understand, as we know, horses are constantly giving us information, just like people are constantly giving us information. The question and the variable is, are we open to receiving it? Are we open to receiving it? And do we understand how to receive it? Are we listening for it? So as we begin to understand the basics and then begin to able to interpret the communication, and to understand how to be in relation, boundaries, reading nonverbal, which we need to do in every aspect of our life, we begin to get that comfort. And that comfort really is a mutual respect. And when we have that, we can be in that dance together. And then the power of the messages received are overwhelming. One of the things that strikes me is in the few workshops that I've done, and in the training I've done with you, is how much you're learning as you're teaching. And I think that's another part that really drew me to do this work. Is I don't think I've ever partnered with another coach or another colleague who was such a great collaborator as our friends, the equine partners are. I forget who it was. It might have been Teddy Roosevelt who said, "There's something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of a man." And they're just such great partners, that they're co-facilitators that just make our job as coaches that much more powerful. So that was certainly kind of a deep insight and something that I've learned.
Yeah, I wanted like to weave that because I think that was really great in terms of, I think, highlighting what we learn with horses. And I think to bring it back to that, element of that fear of power, I think is also the fear of the unknown. And I know from watching you go through that and pulling from what you just sort of said, it's like when we understand the nonverbal communication, when we have a knowing of how to be in relationship with the horse, the fear doesn't exist there because we have the information and we understand, the perspective of this is not something I have to fear, but more that I have to understand. And the horse is giving me, a tool to understand things, I think, in a deeper way that, we know with horses, there's no ego, there's no baggage. It's very obvious when you have 1,000-pound animal mirroring something to you. You can take in that information, I think, a lot more purely. And I think that knowledge creates power in itself. So I think that there is a knowledge that we start to introduce to that, instead of, I think, being afraid of that unknown place of this large animal, instead it becomes, I think, like where you have transitioned into what you're talking to, is the horse becomes a teacher and a collaborator and an
100%.
ally. And so the relationship shifts that way, to kind of look at the horse in a very different way. Instead of it's something I'm afraid of, it's like, actually, here's a resource for me, and a teacher and a collaborator that is so pure and so potent. And like you said, you don't get that collaboration as much as, like, we might enjoy working with one another. You have a comfort. It's different with a horse. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, in terms of that collaborative space as a coach, because I think that that's really powerful. What is it that you appreciate or you think the horses brings to that makes that partnership so powerful for other people to experience and for yourself?
Okay, I'll just reframe it, just make sure I'm clear on the question. So when we're working with horses and when we're coaching with horses, what is it? What is that aspect, that unique aspect that the horses bring to it?
Yeah, and also, like you'd mentioned, how unique it is for the as to being a collaborator with a horse and having a co-facilitator as a horse. So, like, what's unique and different about that you get with a horse that you don't get with a human? I think
Great
both.
question.
Yeah, and I think would be really cool if you can talk about it both from, like, as a coach and having like a co-coach and a horse, and also like what's been the impact for you to receive the horse in that kind of teaching role too. If you kind of get what I'm saying there.
Yeah, I do. I'll answer the first part, and that is, so there's a saying that says the quality of your coaching is connected to, and the power of your coaching is connected to the power of your questions, right?
Mm. I
So,
love that.
as I spoke about earlier, clearly the horses help us, and they demand it of us, to be able to read the energy in the space as to what's going on, to be aware of nonverbal. So to cut to the chase, when you're coaching with horses, there's an ability to and you helped teach this, I have a tendency that I can make things hard. When you turn it over and you just step back and you're able to look around and read what's happening with the herd, so many powerful questions come up. And most importantly is because horses are mirroring what's happening with us, right? We know that they're aware of what's happening cognitively with us before we're even aware of it, right? So they're holding that mirror up to a group of workshop participants, whether it's one or whether it's seven. And so I can stop kind of working so hard. It's not that I'm working, I'm kind of shifting. It's not that I'm not working as hard. I am in partnership, and I am observing what they're picking up on, and observing what they're picking up on. It just naturally leads to very authentic, powerful questions. I think that we both know that moves people very emotionally. It can either just stop them in their tracks of something that they weren't even thinking about, or it can hit them and land very powerfully emotionally. So to bottom line that, I'd say being just great readers of the space, and mirroring what's happening with each individual, they help us to really get to the core of powerful questions, and putting it back on the coachee or the workshop participant to ask themselves, what's happening with you? What's going on? What shift did you notice in you? What shift did you notice in the herd? What did you notice that horse just did? Did you see body posture change? Did you see a lick and chew? Did you see muscle tension relax in the neck?
Yeah.
And as they become aware of what's happening in others, they become aware of what's happening within themselves. And there's no, and as we also know, there's no hiding. There's no hiding.
There's no. There's two things that really stood out for me when you said that. I think the first one, and you're right, I always like, and I say this a lot, when I'm putting people through the training, it's like the horses do make our job a lot easier. And I look at it as like, I don't have to do maybe as much heavy lifting, that's interpretation. Like the difference between if I'm coaching a client over the phone, there's times where I wish that I was standing in the field, because I'm like, I know the movement of moving this person through this thing would be so much easier if I was with the horses, because I think there's things like I think there's in some ways a barrier between human to human, and where we can put up smoke screens with each other and we can deflect. And I think that's, as a coach, where the hard work comes in, right? When we have a client that's deflecting and there's a lot of that going on, it's like we have to like be a little bit masterful and work a little bit in terms of getting that person to get to where they're maybe wanting to go through that. With the horses, like you said, they get right to the core, and I think you don't have to go through those barriers because they don't exist with horses. People go out with a horse and there's no defensiveness, and because we just don't carry that energy with a horse. It's like baggage free zone. So yes. I think that's really, so as a coach, as a facilitator, you're right, it's like it does make our job a little easier because we don't have to work as hard to help that person see something because it's being so obviously mirrored by the horse. So I think that that's an accurate, and that's why I love the work so much, because it is also for us as facilitators, it's like it is a little bit easier. And then I think the other thing I loved what you said is the authenticity of what gets created in the moment with the horse. So, and we've both been through leadership, right? So we know we've been through courses, and that where, I mean, my interpretation would be you go through some of those courses sometimes and you know that they're creating or manipulating an experience to trigger a response in you, right? It's like they want it to, and we learned that going through leadership with like the lifeboat exercise, for example, right? They kind of like create these experiences. With horses, I find there's a deeper authenticity of you don't have to manipulate the space at all to create a response. With the horses, it's a very authentic.
Well, you can. I mean, you can't, and you've taught me that as well. It's as we've also been trained, we can't try to coach
No.
well. Being present helps us coach well. Listening helps us coach well. But I have a tendency sometimes, particularly early in my career as a coach, to over prepare. And as training as an equine uh, uh, based, coach, there were many times where I would try to organize and plan what was going to happen. And you walk into the pasture and it's thrown out over the fence. And so you're forced to create in the space of what's being created right there. And that really kind of is reflective of our life.
Yes, totally. I think in saying that, I feel, and this is really what I feel the power of this is also as from a facilitator standpoint, because you're right. I think sometimes we feel like we have to control, and some of that comes from, I think we also have a bit of an agenda of the experience we want to give to people. I mean, obviously it's like if our clients are coming to us, we want to have them have a powerful experience that gets them somewhere. And so I think we put a lot of thought about, well, how do I create that container, and what does that need to look like? And I think the horses kind of strip that away, and it's like, it's not about us controlling that outcome. And you're right, life doesn't work that way. It's not, we can try to feel like we're in control of it, as much as, and we're not. So I think that I love the skill, like what we learned in coaching, dancing in the moment. And I think that's a really powerful life skill, and also a skill as a facilitator of, like, what happens if your agenda falls apart or something happens. It's like, I think the horses really strengthen that muscle of, I can create from anything at any time and at any moment. And if any of my structures fall apart, I'm going to be okay because I know how to dance with this. And I think that that's like what you're talking to with the horses. It's like, you can't exist anywhere else with there. I think it's powerful as a facilitator to build that muscle, to know shit can hit the fan and I'll be cool. I'll know how to recover from that. And also in life, as very appropriate in these times, shit hits the fan, but I know how to dance in this moment because I learned that in the field. So I think that's a really powerful teaching that we get from horses in both those lenses.
I was surprised by the fact of how much I was able to bring back and integrate into my coaching, and just integrate into my life by reflecting on moments that happen in coaching with horses, and bringing that into people. Just after 30 years as a senior leader in a host of different businesses. Um, uh, and I'm going to quote another coach who often says, and he runs a segment on preventing bad moments to becoming bad days. And one of the learnings that I think we get from horses is how quickly they process the information and the dynamics that are going around them. And as prey animals, do they need to flee and leave the space because there's a true threat? Or they process it and they get back to grazing? When we look at it from a business standpoint of running businesses, of having an engaged workforce, of having people being able to be resilient and recover quickly and get back to task, horses are just masterful at teaching that. I think also in coaching, when we help a client uncover a learning, there's a tendency to stay on that and reinforce it to help it sink in and really kind of get in your bones. I think what either a participant in being coached with horses, or a coach entering this type of curriculum to become certified in this, is how quickly and powerful the messages land, and how fast that horse will move and just walk away once the message is landed, and you are left to sit with it. You could almost end a session right there. It comes quickly and it leaves quickly, and you're left to kind of really let it sink in. And that's another beautiful testament to how they work with us as coaches, and how they help the messages sink in. The horse may leave, but I may be able to stay with you and help you process that. Or maybe you just need to go off and process it on your own because the message has been so powerful. I think also their lack of ego. Any one of the 22 horses in your herd, all of them are great teachers. Some are more skilled than others just based on their own life experiences, but they each have something unique to teach. But they don't necessarily care whether you come back to their workshop. They're not trying to sell you on anything. So the authenticity of that message is real. There's no hidden agenda behind it.
Yeah, and I think that that is something, again, like we talked about the whole there's not a barrier, because I think you know that I go out with this field with these horses and they don't care who you are or how much money you make or how much money you've paid to be here, or that they have to perform in a certain way. So it's a more trusted, it's trustworthy and authentic. um I also love when you talk about, I think the other thing, and I'm going to pull a little bit from what you said, where we have to sit with something. And as you know, when you have a profound exchange with a horse, it doesn't leave you. And I know you have had, so it's not just, I think, and this is the power of the horse too, it's not just in the moment. It's like you won't forget that exchange. You'll remember that exchange. And I know you've had, like, I'd love for you to talk maybe or share some of the wisdom you've gotten from one of our horses, particular Chief, because I know I hear from you every now and again, and you have his picture, and that horse has given you some profound insights that you still come back to. And I think that's part of what's powerful about this work, is it doesn't leave you, and those moments become kind of etched. So the teaching that happens in that moment, it's like, it's easy sometimes for us to maybe go to a weekend workshop and like, oh yeah, I had an aha moment, but then I go back into life and maybe I don't really remember what that was. But when you have an exchange of profound teaching with a horse, that doesn't leave you. It's like, so you remember that, you come back to that. So, I mean, I'd love for you to maybe just shortly, maybe share some that have been a standout for you with Chief, and maybe some wisdom you've gotten from him, because I know that those have been standouts for you.
They have. It's funny that you mentioned it, because I occasionally just flip through pictures of my retreats or workshops that I've run. And so that there are three, and I remember them vividly. One was we were in the pasture at Epona, and we were looking down into the valley, kind of away from the ranch. And Chief and I were both standing in the same direction, maybe 3 feet apart. And I was really contemplating, I've been on the edge of always doing more coaching and having it be a bigger part of my personal and professional life. And the message just got delivered, is that your purpose in life is to work with people directly and helping people discover themselves. So that's one. And it was just absolutely etched in stone. Another is that I think I have a tendency, maybe it's birth order, maybe it's how I was raised, maybe it's insecurities that I hold, that I work so hard to cajole others and to get others on board with me. And I'm not sure if, I believe it was actually Shiva who might have taught this. And the message was just very clear in terms of, stop working so hard. Let people come to you. Let it happen organically. And it was manifested by me really trying to get close to them. And when I stopped trying, there was just an alignment. We either walked together or we leaned into one another. But it happened only after I released and I gave up. And then the third was a different occasion. I was down by the creek, And it was with Chief. Chief and I have had a lot of powerful kind of moments and messages together. Um, and it was literally almost as if he was like Mr. Ed, the talking horse. But it just reified that, kind of your power is not in your head. Your power is not in your body. Your power is in your heart. And it was such an emotionally powerful message that I'll really never forget. I actually carry this heart, this little stone heart, with me basically wherever I go. I have several of them. But it was you had three very powerful messages. Stop trying so hard is one. Power is in your heart is the other. And reason for people become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And I have incredible photos, I think, from some of these interactions with you. But
Yeah.
I think that what I wanted to highlight about that, because it's like, I think with the horses, we do get almost like these, I call them like lifelines and anchors, where because when we go back in our life, we are going to forget and stuff happens and our fears come up and we get into doubt again, or we fall back into default patterns. But I think when you have these like standout moments, it's like, oh, but wait a second, I'm going to go back to that moment and remember that message, and I can bring that forward, so I don't fall into repeating patterns in the past, or I don't, sit on my ass and not do anything because this horse told me my purpose and now I have to go and live my purpose. And I mean, I've witnessed you in being courageous and creating your path, and um, creating what that looks like, and staying the course. And I think coming back to that alignment of what's my purpose and where's my power. And I think that that's been an amazing thing to be a witness of. And I think that that's also the power of the horse. It's like you have these profound moments, like you said, that get etched in your mind so vividly, and it doesn't leave you, and so you have that to come back to. So I think that's the other, in terms of how we create sustainable change, because we know as part of this work, obviously as coaches, is we want to help people to create transformation and change in their life.
Yep.
And how do we do that? And I think part of what creates the sustainability of change, because you can have an intellectual conversation about, oh, I'm going to do this better, or this is where I'm changing in me. But I think when you have those moments with the horse where it's that vivid, um, that's where the sustainability of that new way of being, or that new belief system, or that new courage comes from, that you can continue to live and create with. And so I think the impact of that, and how we create space for people, is you're setting them up for greater success and sustainability of change and transformation of their growth. That is
Without
easier for them.
question.
Yeah.
Without question. It just would leave anybody who watches this and is considering working with horses, either being coached or a coach embarking on a facilitation certification, is just to kind of remind and reinforce. I think the theme of my first workshop was around increasing your horsepower through work with horses. And we have this preconceived notion that horsepower is all about just true grit. The conventional thinking of, horses pulling, logs and carts and hauling people. And yet their power is really conserved. I think just going through life and whatever work you're in, we waste a lot of energy. We waste a lot of energy in worry. We waste a lot of energy in concern about what other people think. We waste even kind of energy in our preparation. And horsepower is not about sheer power. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about energy conservation. It's about assessing situations. It's about acting authentically and responding authentically. So be prepared that it's not necessarily about more or about working harder. There's a gentleness to the work. There's a gentleness. The messages may be very powerful, but they're delivered tenderly. And there's a peacefulness of the work, whether you're coaching and you are a coach, or whether you're a coachee and you're just looking for an experience. There's a and I think that that's how a lot of people learn. We don't learn at our best in these intense, stressful environments. And so you're kind of forced to just, if you really want to succeed at the work as a facilitator, or you really want to receive the messages, you're almost forced to surrender to the energy in the space, or adapt to it. And most of the time, it's pretty peaceful, with the exception of the time that we were co-facilitating that women's group, and they were concerned that nothing was happening. And with that, around 15 horses from the herd literally went into a full gallop and began, galloping toward them at about 25 miles an hour. And I think we both asked, is anything coming up now?
Yeah, I remember that. It's funny how things get manifested, isn't it? When there's that, but there's we've had some, I think, fun and I think powerful moments. And I think for me, seeing your journey of that beginning place of like, I'm very intrigued by this work and I'm a little bit scared of horses, to hearing you share the wisdom of it and the embodiment of it, is amazing. I think this has been a very wonderful conversation, and I'm sure
Well,
there
thank
will be
you for
more.
having me.
Yeah, I imagine there'll be more. And I know we're sort of in terms of, so for people that are curious about the horse medicine leadership program, I will be providing links in the YouTube video of where to find it. Depending on when you're watching this video and timing, we are in process of updating and recreating that website. So we'll have something for you, and there might be an upgrade. And then of course, Russell is also in the process of creating his new website. And so when that is up and ready, we will also include that link there. But you're welcome to, I'll put my website through there. You're welcome to get in touch with myself. And if you'd like to connect with Russell, I'll be able to make that connection. And then again, as things get updated, we'll have all that up there, because I think what I love about doing this program is I really value the different people that come in it and the lens that they bring to the work. And I have only so much that I can bring, and I think being able to have a different lens and strengths in this work, and I know in kind of the work that you do, is very valuable. And so I hope to be able to continue to highlight that, because there's so much that each of us bring to this path, when we're called to it. And I think you said it early on, what I love about this work so much is there's like a never ending, it doesn't bottom out. It doesn't get to the point where it's like we've shared everything that we know about this work, or all of the different layers to that, or there's not another perspective that would be valuable. I learn something new every time I walk out in the field,
Right.
about the horses, about people. And so I think that that's the thing that's exciting about this. It's like there's always more to learn, and there's always more to experience, and there's always new perspective that we can bring. Do you want to say anything else in closing, Russell, before we kind
Yeah, I
of
would just say that I think to anybody who's interested in it as a coach, as integrating it into your practice, or someone who's watching and saying, I've been coached, but I'd be curious to be co-coached through horses. I would say if the curiosity comes up in you and it lingers even for a little while, pursue it. There's clearly something there, and I feel confident in saying I can almost guarantee you that the lessons will be profound, the learnings will be transformational and enduring. It's something that you will carry with you, whether you spend a day, whether you spend a week, whether you're a coach and you in training and you spend 5 or 6 weeks. It will last a lifetime.
Yeah, thank you for that. And there is just to add, Russell's in New Jersey. So Russell's based out of New Jersey in the US, and I am based out of British Columbia, Canada, where I run the training program. Um, you can come and visit either one of us if, you know, I know there's opportunity if someone's called to work with you, Russell, or explore the work that you do as a work.
And surprisingly enough, in New Jersey, we have some beautiful horse farms, many beautiful horse farms, just 25 miles west of New York City.
Yeah, that's right. So part of this is it's not just exposing, you know, horse medicine leadership, but the work with horses in general. So if you're watching this and you're curious about, maybe I can't get to British Columbia, or I'm closer to New Jersey, or you want to know where there are places, you know, close by that I can be exposed to this work, please get in touch with us, and we're happy to kind of share some resources around that as well. Because I
Great.
think it's about coming to us. I think it's about this work in general. So um, Russell, that was awesome. And thank you for coming on here. I look forward, I'm sure we will do more than just one episode together, because I know there's a lot of different angles and reflections that I think come from this conversation. So I appreciate you
Great.
coming on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
We will indeed. Have a great day.